Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Friends of Islam, this time the Islamic Notes is back before you to share Islamic information. Hope it inspires your activities today. And don't forget to click the subscribe button and activate the bell button notifications so you don't miss the latest news from the Islamic Notes channel. BR is a devout Christian man who comes from a small town in the United States. He grew up in a religious environment where prayer services and Bible teachings became an important part of everyday life. BR is known as a diligent and determined person, devoted to studying the Holy Book. He studies diligently and often becomes a leader in religious discussions at church. For him, religion is not just a belief, but a foundation of life that must always be defended. His beliefs are so strong that he does not hesitate to face anyone who questions or opposes his views. However, behind his fiery enthusiasm, there is another side to BR that is rarely seen by others. His belief that what he believes is the absolute truth. This sometimes makes him feel skeptical of his views or other religious beliefs, even though he still tries to maintain politeness in every discussion. For him, every debate is an opportunity to strengthen his faith and win others to his beliefs. One day, an invitation to take part in an interreligious debate brings BR on a journey that changes his life. One bright morning, BR was enjoying a cup of coffee while checking his usual messages. An invitation caught his attention. The letter came from an organization that often holds interreligious dialogue. The content was an invitation to participate in an interreligious debate event that would discuss a major theme, the concept of God in Islam and Christianity. He knew that this topic would be full of challenges, but he felt challenged. For him, this was a golden opportunity to test his knowledge and demonstrate the strength of his Christian beliefs in front of a wider audience. In his heart, he believed that he had a strong argument, especially because he had spent years studying the scriptures and practicing facing various difficult questions. So he accepted the invitation. That day, he began to prepare material and arguments that he believed would break his opponent's beliefs. For him, this was not just a debate, but a mission to convey what he considered to be the true truth. The day he had been waiting for finally arrived. The large hall where the debate was held was full of spectators from various religious backgrounds, all curious to witness an in-depth discussion about the concept of God. BR arrived early, dressed neatly in a black suit that reflected his confidence. When the event was about to start, a man entered the room, attracting BR's attention. The man was Abdullah, his debate opponent. Abdullah looked simple, wearing traditional clothing that reflected his identity as a Muslim. His face shone with serenity. A faint smile adorned his lips as he greeted the people in a friendly manner. BR observed Abdullah from a distance, and in his heart, he felt sure that he looked like an ordinary person. There is nothing to worry about, thought BR, smiling sarcastically. This belief grew even more when he heard some people call Abdullah a person who was more silent in discussions, more often using verse quotations rather than long logic. To BR, Abdullah was just an opponent who was easy to beat, especially because BR felt he truly mastered this topic. But when Abdullah started speaking to introduce himself, BR was a little surprised by his voice. Abdullah spoke with confidence, but very softly. He spoke with sincerity, which BR rarely found in his previous debate opponents. Abdullah did not appear aggressive or defensive, but rather relaxed, like someone who doesn't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. Although BR still underestimated Abdullah, he was sure that victory in the debate this time was within his grasp. What BR didn't know yet was that his meeting with Abdullah would be the start of something much bigger than just a debate. The debate began with the host giving BR the first opportunity to speak with confidence. BR stood behind the podium and opened with greetings and polite introductions. Brothers and sisters, today we will discuss a very important topic, the concept of God. I will show that the true God is God who appears to humans through his children. BR began to convey his argument by quoting verses from the Bible, explaining that God is love, which manifests itself in human form, making it clear for humans to follow his example. The Christian crowd gave enthusiastic applause for BR's argument. BR then sat down again, waiting for Abdullah's turn. When Abdullah's turn came, the atmosphere in the hall became silent. All eyes were on him, including BR's, who sat with a confident expression, waiting for a response which he thought would not be able to match his argument. Abdullah stood up slowly, took a moment to adjust the microphone, then smiled calmly at the audience without haste. Abdullah began to express his gratitude to the audience, organizers, and of course BR for the discussion, which he called an opportunity to learn from each other. Then Abdullah spoke, "I respect the arguments presented by our brother BR, and I hope that this discussion can provide benefits to all of us. But instead of directly answering questions or conveying counter-arguments, I want to remind everyone that, by Allah's right, I did not come here to win the hearts of the brothers through debate, but to share the message that only Allah is able to open hearts that seek the truth." His voice was low but piercing, not with a tone of challenge but with deep sincerity. Abdullah then sat back down. BR, although still maintaining a smile, felt a little disturbed in his heart. He didn't know why, but the way Abdullah spoke and the calmness he exuded left a strange impression on his mind. In the midst of the atmosphere, some laughter was heard. "Is that how you answer, without giving any arguments? Is this your way of avoiding debate?" Some of the audience, especially Christians, laughed in support of BR. They thought Abdullah had run out of words or was unable to answer BR's arguments. But on the other hand, there were also viewers who were actually impressed by Abdullah's calmness. The way he recited verses from the Quran with full confidence and without any intention of attacking made them feel there was something bigger in his attitude. But there were also those who began to ask, why was Abdullah so calm? When the debate finished, the atmosphere in the hall was again noisy with applause and chatter from the audience. Several people from the Christian camp approached BR to congratulate him and praise his sharp arguments. They said that BR had conveyed his views convincingly and even succeeded in cornering his opponent. BR accepted the praise with a satisfied smile. But in the midst of this victory, there was something that felt odd in his heart. He tried to ignore the feeling, but it kept ringing in his mind. Later, when BR walked toward his car, the feeling that he had felt during the debate with Abdullah still lingered. He muttered to himself, trying to convince himself that he didn't need to think about it anymore. When BR got into the car and started driving home, he tried to focus on the music playing on his radio. But Abdullah's voice while reading the verse kept playing in his mind. When he got home, BR felt physically tired, but his mind was still full of curiosity. BR tried to divert his mind by doing his usual routine of heating coffee and checking emails, but the restless feeling didn't go away. Finally, he gave in to his curiosity. He sat in front of his computer, opening a search engine, and typed Al-Qasas 56. Several search results appeared, and BR chose one of the links that provided a translation and interpretation of the verse. When he read the translation, his heart was stirred. The verse which Abdullah had quoted taught that guidance, hidayah, is not something that can be forced by humans. No matter how much someone wants to convince others, in the end, only God has the power to open their hearts. BR began to feel a change in his understanding after hearing the verse read by Abdullah. He realized that all this time he had relied too much on logic and intelligence. The verse opened his eyes to the power of God, which is far greater than human thought. BR began to feel dissatisfaction with his old beliefs, especially in the Christian concept of salvation. He asked himself, is God fair if salvation is only given to those who know Jesus? What about the many people who have never heard of him? This feeling became stronger as he pondered God's universal love. The answers given to him by his own beliefs didn't satisfy him. Meanwhile, Abdullah's calm and peaceful beliefs made BR wonder if there might be a greater truth than what he had believed. BR's inner conflict deepened, and he began searching for something greater than his previous understanding of God and truth. A few weeks later, despite trying to divert his attention, his curiosity about Islam and the verse Abdullah had recited could not disappear. He felt compelled to understand more, and then bought a translated Quran secretly. Although he felt embarrassed at first, he started reading it. At first, he had difficulty understanding many things, but over time, he felt a sense of relief and began absorbing the teachings. One thing that touched him deeply was the concept of Allah, the merciful and the guide. Every time he read the Quran, his heart became calmer and more peaceful. He also began to study the history of Islam, the life of the Prophet Muhammad, and the simple but deep message of Islam, which balances the worldly life and the afterlife, full of hope. The more he studied Islam, the more he felt that these teachings provided answers to many questions that had been bothering him about God and how humans should live. BR felt a deep change in himself. Although he could not explain it in words, his perspective on religion and life began to change. He decided to continue studying with an open heart and a mind ready to accept Islam. He felt that he needed someone to talk to, someone who had teased him in the previous debate. Abdullah came to mind, and BR decided to contact him. Yusuf Abdullah Bonner. Allah always guides me. 4 years ago, after reciting the 2 sentences of the Shahada, Yusuf Abdullah Bonner read the Quran and performed prayers in secret in a monastery that had been his home for 10 years. At the time, he said he was worried that his conversion to Islam would be discovered by the monks. The fear disappeared in him after he read the translation of Surah Al-Hadid, verse 27. And they invented Rabbaniya, even though we did not make it obligatory on them. However, they themselves invented it to seek God's pleasure, so they did not preserve it with the proper maintenance. After reading that verse, I knew that I could not continue working there. Monastery. Subhanallah, said the man who is now a Dawah activist in England. Bonner decided to leave the monastery. He served as a Dawah activist and helped new immigrants, converts, to the true path of Islam. Bonner was born in Fulham, London, without any religious beliefs or education. Although he did not know religion, since childhood he admitted to having a vague feeling, but echoing in his chest, that there is a God who always protects me. That feeling made him think seriously about religion and spirituality when he was 20 years old. He observed various philosophies that he considered strange and at the same time amazing for the next 10 years. However, I admit that at first those thoughts were often distracted by worldly things, he said. Until later, when Bonner became more serious about observing all forms of spirituality, he studied many concepts such as neo-paganism, a belief that represents the existence and power of God with physical materials such as idols, and the movements that accompany it to Buddhist meditation. At that time, Bonner tried to look back at the past and realized that up to that point, he had been attracted to pagan philosophies because they justified all worldly desires and egoism. It didn't take me too long to get into that philosophy, and I immediately went on my quest to find the truth, said Bonner, who later decided to study other religions. He was 30 when he began studying Buddhism. Over the next few years, he tried practicing Buddhist meditation in various Buddhist schools and felt called to return to continue his search. I realized I had not found the truth at that time. One time Bonner came to a church. I asked God to guide me. Shortly after the visit to the church, he came to the Catholic Church. He eventually became involved in monastic activities. For 10 years, Bonner worked there and also lived there occasionally. During that time, he shared with the priests and monks about prayer. During that time, I also experienced ups and downs in my faith, even though I was in the process of becoming a monk at that time. It turned out that God had other plans. In the winter of 2006, he experienced what he called a collapse of faith. He continued to work at the monastery, but stopped praying and attending monastery activities. But behind it all, Bonner continued to ask for God's guidance and help. I lost my faith in the teachings of the church, but I still had the feeling I had since I was a child, that God was always protecting me, he said. Bonner then looked at Islam and started talking to several Muslims online, including those who had just converted to Islam. From them, Bonner, who was 41 at the time, started studying Islam through the books they sent. May Allah reward their good deeds, he said. That's how Bonner got to know and learn about Islam without meeting a single Muslim. Just 2 months later, in September 2007, he went to the nearest mosque and pronounced the Shahada. Alhamdulillah, he said. After declaring his testimony as a Muslim, the man who studied at the University of Kent, Canterbury, continued to work at the monastery and stayed there occasionally, until the situation began to feel difficult. I read the Quran with one eye, constantly watching the door, in case one of the monks saw me, he said. I also prayed in secret because, of course, they could not accept my Islam. A fragment of Surah Al-Hadid, verse 27, then made him realize that he had to leave the monastery. The decision was a difficult one for Bonner, who had lived there for 10 years. The priests and monks were like my brothers, he said. but he was convinced it was a decision he had to make. He also stopped playing music in pubs, which had long been one of his activities. It hasn't been easy since then, and Bonner has experienced the opposite. The drastic changes in his life have left him unstable. In the first months, there were many temptations to go back to my old life. But after experiencing the truth, there is no reason to go back to living a lie, no matter how comfortable that life is, he said. Bonner is thankful that it wasn't as hard as he had feared and feels that God gave him the strength to fight to leave his past behind and start a new life. There were many difficult challenges along the way, but there were also many amazing things, he said, as he repeated the Talmud. With the grace of God, Bonner said, he was finally able to work in the field of dawah with the help of a number of Muslims from the Islamic Education and Research Academy, IERA, founded by a British convert, Yusuf Chambers. Through this institution, Bonner was able to help and support the converts, and he said he was happy about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me in many ways, he said. My attention and preoccupation now are for those who have not yet converted to Islam and those who have just received guidance to embrace Islam, said the dawah activist who married a Croatian woman named Sakina. There are many forces and drives that continue to tempt us to move away from the truth. For that, we must hold on tightly to the rope of religion, of Allah, and not separate from each other, he said while summarizing part of the 103rd verse of Surah Ali Imran.